Okay, so now we're going to talk about what the teacher view looks like. When I go to my classes up here at the top, I can see a list of all my classes. If I go to my content, this is where all of my assignments that I have created will end up being. Notice this right here looks a little different because this right here is the actual project that I would have my kids go through, and they would go through and modify their own video, and that'll be another section. But if I go back to my classes, well, before we do that, notice I do have the assign option. So what I can do is I can click on this math class, for instance, click on assign, and what will happen is I'll see a list of all my classes. I can see the grade level and also know how many students are in that class. You can even decide if you want to prevent skipping, and you can even change the due date. So what I'm going to do is go back to my classes. I have my assignment. I can even go through and prevent skipping here if I would like. I can go through and change the due date. Notice right now that it is assigned to today is the 10th of December. If I go through and change it to the 11th and save it, notice it disappears from the due soon, but what happens is under upcoming it shows up as a future assignment. So you can actually go through and program and set up your videos ahead of time, which is really cool. Now I'm going to go back and put that where we can play with it today. So I'm going to do now, I can also look on here and see that 60% of my class has this completed. If I decide to let a student go through and retry it, it's going to change that percentage down because technically they have not turned it in yet, since they can redo it. I can click on the share option, and I can either embed it, or I can copy the URL, or you can even go through and email it. Another option is I can go through and delete it. This one right here is really cool because it actually allows you to view it as a student. And what's cool too is when you go through, and I can kind of skip ahead because I allowed skipping to happen, but if you turn that off, then they won't be able to skip. But what will happen is you can actually go through and answer it as a teacher. So if you want to test to make sure your questions are okay, we'll go ahead and answer them. And what will happen, let's say on this part here, what should John do in this classroom management situation? Well, I'm going to say, talk with the student. And when I hit submit, and I can continue on and watch, but what's going to happen is when I go back to my classes, we're going to talk about another feature, and that is progress. So by clicking on the progress button, what I can do is I can see that we have watched part of the video. Notice I skipped around, so me as the teacher is now showing up. And I can even go through and reset these 4 students that actually watched it, but maybe not have done so well. So I can even let them go through and redo it. I can click on a question to see how students answered. So this question right here, one student answered 10, one student answered 7. You can kind of go through and look. And I can even see who answered what questions. And I can even see who has not answered, which is really cool. You can export it. You can even go through and grade your open-ended questions. So I can go through, and right now, me as the teacher, I'm the only one that answered, and I can go through and leave a comment for that student so they'll see it on their end. And I can even say correct or incorrect. And so if you say it's incorrect, you can even go through and tell the student why they have it incorrect, if you would like. Another cool little feature is if you hit this little I button up here, it'll give you information on what everything does. And so it kind of gives you a good explanation. And you also have 2 tabs. So right now we are in homework view. If I click in the classroom, I can see how much, what progress they went through and watched the video, and what their grade was with that result. Now also what I can do as well is if I click on the individual student, so I'm going to go back to homework, if I click on Santi, I can see individual how he did per question, and I can also see how many times he's gone through and watched that video. So this first part, he rewatched that part twice. He rewatched this part twice. There is another part in here that was a comment. So it doesn't count as a question, so that's why it's not showing up there. But that part got rewatched twice as well. And then it looked like he had pretty good understanding on what was happening right here, or at least he thought he did. So this is a really cool feature, and notice on the short answer, I could even go through and say yay or nay on whether he got it correct. So notice by changing that, it changes his performance. So that's really cool, and you can cycle through all your students that way. So that's a pretty cool little feature. And that right there is pretty much what you're going to see on the teacher view.